She stood in the narrow hallway of a small hostel in Manila, staring at the open zipper of her backpack. Her hands froze. Her breath slowed. Then her heart dropped. The wallet was gone. Not misplaced, not forgotten. Gone. Cash, cards, even the small note she carried with emergency numbers, all missing. For a brief second, she laughed quietly, the kind of laugh people make when they still believe a problem will solve itself. She told herself this was the Philippines. Someone would help. Someone would fix it. After all, people here were used to hardship, used to serving foreigners. That belief, subtle but firm, had followed her since the moment she booked her ticket. Just hours earlier, she had joked with another guest, saying she felt safe because Filipinos were kind, simple, and always smiling. She meant it as praise. But underneath was something else. A quiet assumption that kindness came from weakness, that generosity came from lack of power. She did not see it as looking down. She saw it as truth. Her name was Anna, 35, Russian, independent, proud of surviving on her own in a hard country. She had grown up believing strength meant endurance and dignity meant never asking for help. The Philippines, to her, was an escape from seriousness. Cheap food, warm beaches, a place to take photos and then leave behind. Now she stood alone, the noise of the city leaking through thin walls, and realized she had not eaten since the night before. 3 days stretched ahead of her with no money, no contacts, and no clear plan. She went downstairs and spoke to the front desk, her voice polite but edged with frustration. She expected confusion, maybe indifference. She expected excuses. Instead, the young Filipino clerk listened quietly. No rushing, no judgment. He did not ask why she was careless. He did not question her story. He simply nodded and said, "Let us see what we can do." Those words unsettled her more than anger would have. She waited for the catch, the form to fill, the fee. Nothing came. As hours passed, hunger grew sharper. Anna walked the streets, counting coins she found in the bottom of her bag. Not enough. She passed small eateries, smelled rice and grilled fish, and felt embarrassment burn in her chest. People noticed her hesitation. A vendor looked at her longer than usual. She looked away, assuming she was being judged. What she did not know was that word had quietly spread. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a few sentences exchanged in low voices. A foreigner had lost everything. She was alone. That night, Anna sat on a bench near a small church, pretending to scroll through her phone to hide the fact that she had nowhere to go. The church doors were open. Soft singing drifted out. She did not understand the words, but the sound slowed her breathing. A woman approached her, older, carrying a plastic bag. She smiled and handed Anna a piece of bread and a bottle of water. No questions, no explanation. Anna tried to refuse. Pride rose first, then hunger won. She took it. Their eyes met briefly. The woman nodded and walked away. In that moment, something shifted. Not gratitude, not relief, confusion, because this was not what Anna expected. She expected charity to come with pity. She expected help to feel small. Instead, it felt quiet, dignified, almost equal. She ate slowly, watching families pass by, children laughing, people greeting one another by name. She realized she had arrived believing she understood this country, believing she knew its limits. But as the night air cooled and the city settled, one question began to form, heavy and unavoidable. What if the people she thought were beneath her were the ones about to teach her the most? And what happened next would test everything she believed about strength, pride, and the Philippines itself. When morning came, Anna woke up on the same bench, her body stiff, her pride bruised in a way she had never experienced before. The city was already alive. Jeepneys roared past. Vendors set up carts with practiced rhythm. People moved with purpose, even joy, despite the early hour. She watched them with unfamiliar eyes. Back home, hardship often hardened people. Here, it seemed to soften them. She had grown up hearing stories about countries like this, places shaped by colonization, poverty, and disaster. In her world, these places were always described as dependent, always needing help, never leading. Filipinos, she was told, were warm but not strong, friendly but not capable. It was a narrative passed quietly through travel forums, casual conversations, even documentaries that focused only on struggle, never dignity. And yet, standing there hungry and exposed, Anna realized something unsettling. She was the one who felt small. She decided to go to the police station, not because she believed they would recover her money, but because it felt like the only responsible thing to do. The building was modest. No intimidating walls, no sharp voices. She explained her situation slowly, embarrassed by her own accent, expecting impatience. Instead, the officer listened carefully, asked gentle questions, and wrote everything down with care. He told her recovery was unlikely, but assistance was possible. He did not promise miracles. He promised effort. That honesty stayed with her. The day unfolded slowly. Hunger returned in waves. Pride fought it every time. She told herself she could endure, that she had endured worse winters, harsher jobs. But being alone in a foreign country stripped her defenses faster than she expected. She wandered into a small market, drawn by the sound of conversation. A woman noticed her hesitation and offered her a seat. Someone handed her soup. No cameras, no pity, just food. Anna felt a sharp contradiction forming inside her. These people had less than she did on her best days, and yet they gave without calculation. In her country, help was often transactional. Here, it felt communal. Still, not everything felt warm. Some looks lingered too long. Some voices whispered. Being a foreigner without money placed her in a strange space, not powerful, not invisible, just vulnerable. For the first time, she understood how easily dignity could slip away when systems failed you. As evening approached, the hostel clerk from the night before found her. He said the owner had agreed she could stay one more night. No charge. Anna tried to protest. Her voice cracked. She hated that. He raised a hand gently and said something that stayed with her. "Today you are our guest. Tomorrow you will stand again." That sentence carried no drama, no heroism, just certainty. What Anna did not know was that this calm generosity was not accidental. It was cultural. Filipinos had lived through earthquakes, typhoons, wars, and loss. Survival here was never individual. It was shared. Community was not a slogan. It was instinct. That night, lying on a thin mattress, Anna stared at the ceiling fan turning slowly. She replayed the last 24 hours again and again. The officer's patience, the woman's soup, the bread from the church. None of it fit the story she had believed. And as sleep finally came, one quiet realization settled into her chest. The people she thought would ignore her were the only reason she was still standing. But the real test was still coming, because the next morning would force Anna to confront something even harder than hunger. The moment when everyone would be watching her choice. Morning arrived quietly, without ceremony. Anna woke before the city fully stirred, the air still cool, the sky pale and undecided. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then reality returned all at once. No money, no ticket home, no certainty. She sat up slowly, listening to the sounds outside the window. Someone was sweeping the street. Someone else laughed softly. Life continued, indifferent to her fear. She washed her face in the small, shared bathroom and studied her reflection. The confidence she once carried so naturally was gone, replaced by something unfamiliar. Not weakness, but awareness. She realized she had reached a point where she could no longer pretend she was in control. The question now was not how to escape the situation, but how to respond to it. Downstairs, the hostel owner greeted her with a nod, not sympathy. That mattered more than he knew. He asked if she had eaten. She shook her head. He poured coffee anyway and placed a small plate of rice and eggs in front of her. Anna hesitated, then accepted. Each bite carried a strange mix of comfort and humility. She was receiving help, but she was not being reduced by it. Later that morning, she returned to the police station to ask about her report. The officer remembered her name. That surprised her. He said there had been no update, but he also said something else. He told her about the Russian embassy in Manila and offered to help her contact them. No rush, no pressure, just options. As she stepped outside, Anna noticed how people interacted with one another. A man stopped to help an elderly woman cross the street. A group of students shared food from a single bag. None of it was dramatic. None of it was staged. It was simply how things were done here. She began to understand that what she once saw as simplicity was actually discipline, a different kind of strength. In the afternoon, Anna sat in a small public plaza, editing photos on her phone to distract herself. A young Filipino man approached and asked about her camera. Photography was his hobby. He spoke shyly at first, then with excitement. When she told him she had lost her money, his expression did not change. He simply said, "You must be very tired." Not poor, not careless. Tired. He introduced her to two friends. They talked about art, travel, and work. No one asked her for anything. When they stood to leave, one of them quietly paid for her drink. Anna felt the familiar resistance rise in her chest, then fade. She was learning when to stop fighting kindness. What she did not know was that this moment marked the shift, the invisible line between observer and participant. She was no longer just a tourist passing through. She was part of a shared human experience, one defined not by nationality, but by circumstance. That evening, the hostel owner told her she could stay one more night. He said it plainly, without expecting gratitude. Anna thanked him anyway. Her voice was steady now. Something inside her had changed. She was no longer ashamed of needing help. She was attentive, present. As night settled, Anna sat near the window, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. She thought about the assumptions she carried into this country, about the jokes she laughed at, about the quiet belief that strength always looked loud and powerful. She understood now that she had been wrong. But the true turning point had not yet arrived, because the next day would ask her to make a choice, one that would define not only how she survived this journey, but how she would remember the Philippines for the rest of her life. The next morning did not begin with panic. It began with clarity. Anna woke before sunrise, not because she was afraid, but because something inside her had settled. The noise of worry that had followed her for days was quieter now. She sat on the edge of the bed and understood that waiting was no longer an option. Not waiting for money, not waiting for rescue, not waiting for things to magically return to how they were. She needed to act. The hostel owner listened as she explained her plan. She would go to the Russian embassy, not to complain, not to demand, just to explain the truth. He nodded slowly and asked if she knew how to get there. She didn't. He called a tricycle driver he trusted, spoke to him quietly, and handed Anna a small piece of paper with an address written carefully in blue ink. The driver waved off payment. "Later," he said with a smile. It was not a favor, it was confidence. Confidence that things would balance out. As the city moved past her, Anna felt a strange tension building. Not fear, responsibility. She was carrying more than her own story now. Every act of kindness she had received weighed gently on her chest. She did not want to betray it with despair. At the embassy, the process was slow. Forms, waiting, careful explanations. She expected cold professionalism. Instead, the staff listened with quiet respect. They told her arrangements would take time. Days, possibly longer. Anna nodded. She had learned patience here. She left with no immediate solution, but no despair either. When she stepped back into the heat of Manila, something unexpected happened. She felt calm. On her way back, the tricycle driver stopped near a small carinderia. He insisted she eat. This time Anna did not resist. She sat among locals, sharing space, sharing silence. A woman asked where she was from. When Anna answered, the woman smiled and said, "Welcome." Not welcome as a tourist, welcome as a person. That afternoon, Anna made a decision that surprised even her. She offered to help at the hostel. Cleaning rooms, sorting laundry, translating for guests when needed. The owner hesitated at first, then agreed. Not because he needed help, but because he respected her choice. For the first time since she arrived, Anna felt useful. Word traveled quietly. A guest offered to lend her a small amount. She declined. Not because she was proud, but because she had found something more grounding than money. Contribution. Dignity returned not through independence, but through connection. In the evening, the same young men she had met days earlier returned. They brought food and stories. One of them asked what she would remember most about the Philippines. Anna paused. She realized the answer had nothing to do with beaches or photos. It was about how people treated her when she had nothing to offer. That night, as rain tapped gently against the roof, Anna lay awake thinking about strength, about how she once believed it came from endurance alone, from surviving without help. The Philippines had shown her a different definition. Strength as shared weight, strength as quiet presence, strength as generosity without announcement. She understood now that the shock was not losing her money. The shock was losing her assumptions. And just when she thought the story had reached its quiet end, something happened that would seal this journey in her memory forever. Because the next message she received would change not only her plans, but her understanding of what it truly meant to be human in a foreign land. The message arrived quietly, without drama, late in the afternoon when the hostel was unusually calm. Anna was folding sheets, her movements slow and familiar now, when her phone vibrated. For a moment, she ignored it. She had learned that urgency did not always deserve attention. Then she glanced down and saw it was from the embassy. Her documents were ready. Temporary assistance approved. A flight would be arranged within days. She sat down on the edge of the bed and let the words settle. This was what she had been waiting for since the first moment she realized her money was gone. Safety, resolution, a way out. And yet, instead of relief rushing in, something else filled her chest, a heaviness she did not expect. That evening, she walked through the neighborhood one last time before sunset. The same streets that had once felt overwhelming now felt familiar. The vendor who handed her change smiled and asked if she had eaten. Children waved as she passed. A man sweeping the sidewalk nodded in quiet recognition. None of them knew the full story. They did not need to. Back at the hostel, Anna told the owner she would be leaving soon. He listened, nodded, and simply said he was glad she was safe. No speeches, no reminders of what he had done. That restraint, she realized, was its own form of dignity. Later that night, the small group of friends gathered again. They ate together, shared laughter, spoke about work, dreams, and ordinary things. At one point, Anna tried to thank them properly. The words tangled. She spoke about kindness, about how she had never expected this. One of them interrupted gently and said, "You were here with us. That is enough." In that moment, Anna understood something deeply uncomfortable and deeply true. She had arrived believing she was visiting a country defined by need. She was leaving a place defined by giving. On the day she left, the tricycle driver showed up again, right on time. This time, Anna paid him. He accepted with a nod, as if balance had quietly returned to the world. As the city moved past her, she looked out at the streets with different eyes. She no longer saw chaos. She saw rhythm. She no longer saw poverty. She saw resilience. At the airport, standing in line with her small bag, Anna felt the weight of everything she had experienced. Losing her money had stripped her of comfort, but it had also stripped away her illusions. She had learned that strength does not always announce itself. Sometimes it sits beside you, offers food, offers time, and asks nothing in return. As her plane lifted off, she pressed her forehead gently against the window. The Philippines grew smaller beneath the clouds, but something else grew larger inside her. Respect, gratitude, a quiet responsibility to tell this story honestly, not as a tale of pity, not as a miracle, but as truth. Because for 3 days, when she had nothing, the Philippines gave her everything that mattered. And long after the hunger faded and the fear disappeared, that lesson would remain. Not about being rescued, but about being human, together.